A live look right now as we begin the Hill on NewsNation at Eagle Pass, Texas, and out west to San Diego, California. Those points and in between along the southern border, the focus of the White House today. President Biden taking executive action, trying to curb the flow of illegal immigration. Coming up here on the Hill, we are live at the border, live up on Capitol Hill with reaction to what the president did and did not do today. Come on in. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. All right, here we are on a pretty big news day. Hanging out with us, Ron Klein, the former Democratic congressman from the state of Florida. Aaron Perini is a Republican strategist. Kurt Bardella, Democratic strategist, NewsNation contributor as well. And Mick Mulaney, former Trump White House chief of staff, NewsNation contributor. Hello to you all. You two are already mixing up.
Mick just hit me.
Well, you've been here since you two were on air together at 6 in the morning.
6 a.m. this morning, yeah.
And now here you back are.
Good to see you here this morning. Thanks for coming out.
I did watch the show, and it's nice to have you here at 6 Eastern in the evening. There's a lot to get to. Obviously, we're going to talk about the border here in a second. President Biden made some comments in a Time magazine interview that I thought were incredibly revealing as it relates to China. We're going to get to that. Merrick Garland up on the Hill today. Some pretty explosive testimony there. But first, as I mentioned, one of the biggest issues in this election, immigration, and the president's executive action to deal with it. Today, President Biden pulled a 180, you could say, issuing an executive action that would drastically limit who can come into the United States through the southern border. Now, it prevents asylum seekers from entry once a 7-day average of illegal crossings hits 2,500. The border would only open to asylum seekers at least 3 weeks after that number then hits 1,500. Administration officials say removals could take place within days, if not hours. Now, just last month, for example, agents apprehended more than 117,000 migrants who tried to cross illegally, averaging 3,800 per day, a decrease, as you can see there, from April. President Biden today blamed Republicans for not passing a bipartisan Senate deal that included many of the same elements.
So today, I'm moving past Republican obstruction and using the executive authorities available to me as president to do what I can on my own to address the border.
But for a bit of context, the issue predates all recent negotiations and bills in both the House and the Senate. If you zoom out for a second and look at this chart right here, right of your screen, total southwest border apprehensions over the last 2+ decades. Apprehensions dropped, as you can see there a bit, in the Bush administration, held relatively steady throughout President Obama's years. Then there was an uptick in 2019 during the Trump administration, and then it ripped starting in 2021 with COVID being a factor. Now, policy matters are also at the heart of it here. Yes, neither party, Democrats nor Republicans, have been able to hammer out a major immigration reform package. That is a fact. But President Biden also overturned some of Donald Trump's measures in his first days in office, including the Remain in Mexico policy, ending increased immigration enforcement at ports of entry, and eventually letting the pandemic-era Title 42 policy, which turned migrants around at the border, expire. So that is some of the backdrop leading today to the president's executive actions. Mick, we had thought that he was going to do this. Why did he do it now?
Because he doesn't have a choice. They're going to lose the election over this unless they do something. I think a lot of my Republican friends have said it's too little too late. Here's what I don't understand. These are very, very aggressive numbers. Keep in mind that the triggers here are 2,500 a day, and then the border doesn't open up again until you get under 1,500. Those numbers were closer to 4,000 and 5,000 a day in the Senate deal that got negotiated. I don't think they can hit these numbers, and I certainly don't think they can hit them by November. And the risk that I think the Biden team is running here, and I'm not sure they considered, is they're going to overpromise and underdeliver. He's been trying to say for months now that it's the Congress's fault, that Congress owns the border. As of today, there's no way to look at it other than Joe Biden owns the border, and if everything doesn't go perfect, this could backfire.
Overpromise and underdeliver, Kurt?
I think he's set up an aggressive posture, and that's what he needed to do. I mean, we've been hearing months after month after month, Republicans drum beating, nothing's happening at the border, this is a crisis, something needs to happen. Well, Joe Biden just did something. So
did he do what you wanted? What you wanted him to do? Did he do?
I want him to use executive authority and take this issue a little bit more off the table so that Democrats can now talk about something else while also just saying, hey, we did something on the border. Congress punted on it. Democrats delivered something. If you don't like that,
But
what do you want from us?
It only takes it off the table if it works.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure they've got the wherewithal to actually do it. They've got the commitment to do it. I think this was a political move. Yes. They don't believe this. They're doing it because they have to do it.
Speaking of politics, we haven't mentioned Donald Trump yet. Here was the former president today reacting to all this.
Crooked Joe Biden is pretending to finally do something about the border, but in fact, it's all about show because he knows we have a debate coming up in 3 weeks.
What do you make of what he said there?
I think everybody is saying the same thing. This was politically motivated. Joe Biden is trying to stop the political bleeding that is happening because of his abject failure at the southern border. And there's a lot of issues that exist with this executive action. Unaccompanied minors are exempt from this as it sits. So you have to start worrying about the repercussions for this, that it will be more child trafficking, things along those lines. This does not solve it. And to Mick's point, they probably won't hit the thresholds anyways to be able to actually make this something that was politically appropriate or a political winner for them.
So you do have some pushback from Democrats, right? Like the president has taken this action now, and now there's some on the left who are questioning why he even did this. What is sort of the pickle that he's in right now, and do you think this was the right move today for him?
No, I absolutely think this is the right move. He had to respond. He put an executive order in place. Congress is not going to do anything. They've made that perfectly clear. By the way, Democrats and Republicans both deserve the blame in Congress. Then you have Stephen Miller on the other side saying, oh, this is child trafficking, this is sexual servitude, all sorts of crazy stuff. All that does is make this look like a much bigger failure on the part of the Trump side when you get into this whole discussion.
You don't think voters though will hold the president accountable on this?
First of all, I think it's an issue. There's no question about it. But I think he has to respond. He did respond. Okay. The timing of what happens and how you measure it is really a big question. I am quite sure they're going to put a lot of assets down on the ground to do everything they can to make this look good.
And just to point out, too, Trump tanking the bipartisan bill negotiated by a conservative senator was also political.
All right, come on in, Allie Bradley, the best in the business, as I always say, down there at the southern border. She covers that area day in, day out for us. Allie, I'm wondering what you're hearing today. Obviously, the reaction from all sides here. What are the folks that you speak to daily? What are they saying now?
Hey, team. Of course, they're addressing the child trafficking issue. Did come up with a lot of law enforcement down here saying you'd be remiss not to think the cartel is going to exploit this, is going to try to shove more kids across the southern border without their parents, or a $13 billion a year in industry. So they're going to try to make their money. Now, the other thing law enforcement saying down here that this new executive action is going to cause a problem for is gotaways. You put any kind of threshold, any kind of cap for people that are desperate to come into this country, they might find a way. It's what law enforcement say. So where we are in Kinney County, they deal with a lot of human smuggling pursuits. We're nearly 50 miles off the border. We spent time in Medina County, 150 miles off the border. They're dealing with human smuggling pursuits. So they fear that people trying to evade Blake is only going to exponentially increase because, again, the Biden administration has said this is a world migration crisis. Are those people just going to go home? Probably not, because according to the Biden administration, they sold everything that they have to get here. So they hit 2,500 and those people just walk back home. Not likely. They're probably going to try to find a hole, try to come in another way that might be evading, trekking through ranches, private property, that might be jumping into a smuggling vehicle, a load vehicle, someone recruited off social media, or that might mean that they're, trying to get in other ways. So that is definitely a contentious point here for law enforcement and something they're concerned about.
All right, Allie Bradley, live for us down on the southern border. Allie, thank you. So from the border now up to Capitol Hill, we want you to be able to hear from both sides of the political aisle. We'll hear from the Democratic Congressman Wiley Nickel in just a moment here. But first, to the Republican Senator from Wisconsin, Ron Johnson, a member of the Homeland Security Committee. Senator Johnson, thanks for being back with us here on the Hill. Appreciate the time, sir. When you got the word of what was in this today, I wonder what your response was.
Well, first of all, it proves the point that I've been making and that we've been making, is that President Biden has always had the authority to secure the border. Now, President Trump had that authority. He secured it. President Biden came in, used that exact same authority, and opened it up because he wants an open border. He caused this problem. So, again, he's proven that point. Let's go back in history, though. It was deferred action on childhood arrivals that has sparked all these crises. Obama had a crisis. He left that out. 2,000 people a day he called a humanitarian crisis. He was correct. But again, this is not going to secure the border. The bipartisan bill set the thresholds at 4,000 or 5,000. Under Biden, over 7,000 people a day have been encountered on the southwest border. In December's over 10,000 people a day. So he's taken this almost an order of magnitude worse than it ever was. But again, he's responsible for this. This is all just political cover right now. I don't think it's going to work.
Here's what the president said today. He spoke at the White House, Senator, in mid-afternoon. I'll get your reaction on the other side.
Republicans in Congress, not all, but walked away from it. Why? Because Donald Trump told them to. He told the Republicans, it has been published widely by many of you, that he didn't want to fix the issue. He wanted to use it to attack me.
There's 156 days, Senator, until November 5th. He now has ammo, does he not, the president, for the next 5 months to say, look, I put something forward, Donald Trump killed it, and now I'm the one taking action. That's the case he's going to make, is he not?
That's false. I don't know any Republican senator that was contacted or dissuaded by President Trump. That bill failed because it codified 4,000 to 5,000 people a day. It actually reduced the presidential authority by making it discretionary and then taking that discretion away after 3 years. It was an awful bill. And again, what President Biden is doing is proving our point is he's always had the authority. He didn't need Congress to act. Now, Republicans would have been happy to strengthen that authority. That's not what he asked for. He asked us to codify his open border policy, which we simply weren't willing to do, or undermine a serious president's authority to secure the border. So again, he can say those things, they're just false.
What would you say, Senator, to the just general concept that something is better than nothing?
No, that was worse than doing nothing because it codified 4,000 to 5,000 people a day.
No, I mean right now with the president taking action.
Threshold. Oh, this might work to a certain extent, but again, it's not closing the border. Murphy said the bipartisan bill, the border never closes. Again, they're really not interested in securing the border. They're interested in political cover. That's it.
All right. Senator Ron Johnson, we'll leave it there. Member of the Homeland Security Committee. Sir, we thank you for being back here on the Hill. Appreciate it.
Have a good night.
You too. So that's some of what you'll probably hear from folks on that side of the aisle, like you just heard from the senator there from Wisconsin. Now to Democrats and over to the House. Come on in, Congressman Wiley Nickel, Democratic congressman from the state of North Carolina. Did the president get this right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is an important first step, but the next step belongs to Congress. We got to act, and we've been trying for this entire Congress to get this done in a bipartisan way. We had 25 Republicans in the Senate willing to support a bipartisan deal, and then Donald Trump opened his mouth and said to kill the deal. That's why we're here today, but this is an important first step, but the next step has to be Congress. Joe Biden can't fund more Border Patrol agents. He can't fund more folks to deal with asylum and immigration judges. That's up to Congress.
Yeah, I know you just heard some of Senator Ron Johnson. Here was Senator Lindsey Graham earlier today, and part of the argument that he is making, and I think you're hearing from some Republicans, I'll get your reaction on the other side.
The policy, as I understand it, is going to be an economic boom for the cartels. This is literally some of the best things that could happen for the business of illegal immigration, because there's going to be a cap where you kind of shut it down every day. So if you're a cartel, you're going to rack and stack them.
It's a bidding war, he says, essentially, that President Biden just created. You would say what?
I think Lindsey Graham, and I think he's just full of it. And this is just the silly season where Democrats are saying one thing, Republicans are saying another. But the fact is, if we want to get anything done, it's got to be done in a bipartisan way. And I just throw this over to Mick. Mick, tell me, the polling's great for Republicans on this issue. So what's the point of working with us when you're winning, and the more pain and suffering you make at the border, the better you do in the polls?
I'll get to Mick in a second.
Already?
Yeah, Mick.
You can answer that real quick, but I want to ask the congressman.
No, I happen to think what the president has done is right. My question is whether or not I get the whole better late than never thing, or too little too late. I get those sides of the arguments. My question is, can he actually deliver on it? He set a target that now he means he owns the border regardless of what happens. If he doesn't hit it, he's even more trouble now than he was yesterday.
Congressman, I'm wondering, and we'll leave it here, what would you say, for example, Senator Alex Padilla out there in California? I'm sure you've seen many within your own party who are no fan of what the president just did today, who think he was wrong. What would you tell Democrats in your own party who think the president missed this?
I think generally when you're talking about bipartisan legislation, if everybody is happy, it's not a good deal. You got to, it's not rainbows and unicorns. Folks on the far left and the far right are not going to be happy with anything that we do in this area. But there's a huge group of folks in the middle. If we could put a bill on the floor like the one that we should have had from the Senate, there's a bipartisan majority to support doing all the things we need to do to fix a broken immigration system and secure the southern border.
Congressman Wiley Nickel, we got to leave it there. Thank you for the time, sir. We'll have you on back. Maybe there's a moderator title in your future. I don't know. Congressman, thank you so much. Appreciate it. You had a target on your back there, Mulvaney. But here's what I want to ask all of you here. There was also an interview in Time magazine that was published today with President Biden. They've done one now with Donald Trump, what a second term might look like. They did one today published with President Biden on what his second term might look like. And here's one of the things that stood out to me. The interviewer asked, quote, "In retrospect, do you think those humanitarian moves helped drive record illegal border crossings?" The president, no. The reporter says, were you wrong to lift any of those measures? And the president says, if I was wrong, it's because I took too long. The White House today, Ron, in its announcement, made it a point to say the quote unquote, these actions are not permanent. Are these actions from now until November 6th? Like, is this just something the president's putting on the table now, and when he gets past the election, he'll reevaluate?
One thing I've noticed about Joe Biden over the years, the guy is as sincere as the day is long. He really is. And when he believes something, he talks about it, and he lays it out, and he means it, and he sticks with it. So I hear about the politics and the timing and everything, but you can't have it both ways. Republicans are saying, oh, well, you own it, you made all these mistakes, and you can't stop people from crossing the border. Well, Donald Trump tried to do that, and guess what? It's the same story. So the reality is, there is an opportunity here to do something. I agree it's not everything, but holistically, the right approach with the immigration judges, all the rest of this stuff, is you got to do it through Congress. And by the way, for Lindsey Graham and these other guys to say, oh, well, this is a blow up, this is a disaster, everything else, 25 of them voted for it. Langford was the architect behind it.
But as we've also laid out, there was a House bill, a Senate bill, like this stuff hasn't gone.
What you just read, by the way, is striking. That's the first I've heard that. The White House came out and said these moves might not be permanent.
That's stunning. Quote unquote, these actions are not permanent, and then I pair that with what President Biden said in that Time interview.
What you just said, I think he's trying to have it both ways.
Yes,
I think he's trying to say, okay, look, I'm going to tell the right wing of my party or the center wing of my party, the people who care about immigration, regardless of what wing you're in, right, I'm going to do this, but I can at the same time tell the progressives, don't worry, it's not permanent. It's the same thing he's doing in Israel. He's asking for money and then holding it, but he's trying to have it both ways.
I don't agree with that.
Okay.
First of all, I think that he believes what he's doing. And
then why put out that statement?
Well, that timing issue is not about a party issue. It's about, listen, we're going to have to evolve this thing. And by the way, he's still pushing on Congress to act. So when and if he gets reelected, obviously it's going to have to be something they have to do together. Permanent doesn't mean election
day. Why say it?
I think it's just an opportunity just to be flexible and show an evolution of his thinking.
I'll give you the last word here, real quick.
I think Mick hit the nail on the head. He is trying to have it both ways, and not only is President Biden trying to have it both ways by saying, oh, these aren't permanent, and oh, look, I'm taking action, but also he was blaming Republicans for the border. So to all fairness, Congressman, it's not fair to say that Republicans are trying to have it both ways. Right. This is a political issue. The American people are saying
everyone trying to have it both ways?
Yeah, I was about to say sort of Donald Trump.
This is a top issue
Everyone's
for voters right now.
All right, still to come here on the Hill over the next 41 minutes or so, what the Commander-in-Chief, speaking of that interview, is now saying about the possibility of sending U.S. troops into the arena to potentially defend Taiwan. The retired four-star General Wesley Clark joins us in about 15 minutes' time. Plus, later in the show, Hot Mike with Mick. Convicted felon.
I wrote it down today.
Sports betting.
The Biden campaign. We've got Harvard.
One of your alma maters.
And gambling and baseball, one of my favorite things.
All right. Still to come here on the Hill. Stay with us. All right, welcome back here to the Hill on NewsNation. Today here in Washington, the U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland testified before the House Judiciary Committee. Garland's testimony comes weeks after lawmakers voted to advance contempt proceedings against him. He defended himself in his opening remarks.
I will not be intimidated, and the Justice Department will not be intimidated. We will continue to do our jobs free from political influence, and we will not back down from defending democracy.
But Republican lawmakers insisted on questioning the fairness of the judicial system over their claims that the system has become politically weaponized. Democrats say Republicans don't have a case here.
Justice is no longer blind in America. Today it's driven by politics. Example number one is President Trump.
Extreme MAGA Republicans will use every tool they have to persecute, harass, and impugn anyone who dares hold Donald Trump accountable.
You know, there is a feeling among Republicans that this is a two-tiered weaponized justice system. Merrick Garland is the sitting AG. When he says that, does that sort of soothe you in any way, or does that message cut through, or whatever he says never will cut through if Donald Trump continues to say what he does?
I think that for Republicans, what Merrick Garland says doesn't hold much validity. When you're putting out letters calling parents at, public meetings for schools terrorists, there's an issue that exists within the Department of Justice that has not been addressed. Until those things are addressed, until there's accountability seen, Republicans are not going to be giving Merrick Garland many props for what he says on camera.
There were Democrats that were standing up for him today, Kurt, but I remember a New York Times story in March, headline, "Inside Garland's effort to prosecute Trump. In trying to avoid the smallest mistakes, Attorney General Garland might have made a big one, ending up in a race against the clock." There's a lot of Democrats who are unhappy with him about how that all went down, then the Robert Hur stuff. So it's not like he's the favorite, prodigal son of that party either.
No, but I think what you saw today was Republicans, particularly members like Matt Gaetz, kind of overreaching on the dais, and then Democrats naturally on the panel kind of coming to the Attorney General's defense against some of that sensational, bombastic that we have seen from those type of figures on the panel. I think oftentimes, both at Judiciary and Oversight, some of these larger-than-life figures end up hijacking the entire hearing. I think that oversight over these departments is important. I think having the Attorney General be able to answer questions before Congress is important and relevant. We thought so back when we had Attorney General Holder before the Oversight Committee, when we were there together at the time. That's okay. But when it becomes this hijacked play to get on cable news and raise money, it turns into something that it shouldn't. And I think Democrats are right today to try to hold the line a little bit and bring that hearing back more to reality.
On cable news? You try to get on cable news every day.
There's nothing wrong with getting on cable news, but, I love cable news, especially NewsNation. My God.
Mick, does that message cut through at all?
Listen, we're 5 months from the election. I think it's 5 months from today. This was a campaign event for both sides today. In fact, I don't know what the hearing was for, but it's possible that the hearing is about the budget at the Department of Justice. That's why you see these folks from the administration have to trot down to these congressional hearings all the time. But when you have a hearing about the budget, there's no rules about what questions you can or cannot ask. This is going to be what all the hearings look like for every single member of the administration between now and next November.
Real quick, last word.
Yeah, this is an example of the polarization of the country right now. Mm-hmm. People look at the Trump administration as being out of control with the Attorney General and with everything that was going on with investigations, blowing up subpoenas and all that kind of stuff.
I bet there's a chance. There's a chance more than one member of Congress, in fact, maybe several of them, never asked Merrick Garland a question.
He said, I'm not doing this today. All right.
Do you agree?
Still much more ahead here on the Hill. The retired General Wesley Clark joins us on the other side of the break. I mentioned this Time magazine interview today. In it, the commander-in-chief made comments about the possibility of U.S. troops in Taiwan. Would he really do that? And what could that look like? You're watching The Hill. Stay with us. Welcome back here to The Hill on NewsNation. So are we about to involve American troops in the Pacific if China invades Taiwan? President Biden was asked about that possibility, during a lengthy Time magazine interview, which in part focuses on what a possible second Biden administration could look like. When asked about potentially deploying troops to Taiwan, the commander-in-chief responded by saying that he is, quote, not ruling out using U.S. military force. He says there is a distinction between deploying on-ground, air power, and naval power, etc., end quote. Now, just last month, China held 2 days of military drills in which it circled Taiwan, something it had not done since August 2022, increasing fears that an invasion could potentially be on the horizon. Now, the United States does have a significant military edge over China. For example, our budget, roughly 3 times the size of China's, and our resources are significantly deeper on the whole, though China does have a larger amount of active military personnel. All right, Mick, former White House Chief of Staff, when you hear the Commander-in-Chief say that, you actually thought, you think that's the right response there from Biden?
This is the exact correct response to
Why?
And different than what he said in the past.
Because the average person will read it and say, whoa, wait a minute, did he just say we could send troops there?
Strategic ambiguity is our policy. Okay, we don't say we will, we don't say we don't. We do that on purpose. In fact, Biden in the past has said a couple times that we would send troops, and then he had to dial that back. So what he said today is exactly what the President of the United States is supposed to say.
Dialing it back, Kurt?
I think Mick's right. I think he's just saying what you're supposed to say. I mean, I think, again, and the former congressman here kind of pointed out, Joe Biden is someone who just kind of says what he thinks. He's sincere almost to a fault. And sometimes he says something that you do got to walk back. But, this time he got it right.
You think, though, Aaron, that this walking it back shows potential weakness?
Yeah, this is a president who has been historically known to capitulate on the world stage when it comes to standing strong against our adversaries. This is another example of that. We're not looking at Russia and Ukraine. If he hadn't capitulated on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, there is a record and a long one here of foreign policy failures. And while he might be saying the correct thing, it's strategic ambiguity is what the United States pursues. Him having to change his answer like this only adds to the weakness that is perceived.
This is a real possibility, though. Is it not? Right? Like the way that China is acting, is it a matter of when, not if, at this point in time?
I certainly think there's a possibility.
Right.
And I think the strategic ambiguity is absolutely, those of us who served in Congress, Foreign Affairs, we understand that policy. At the same time, I think he's also sending a message. Just like in Israel and Ukraine, the United States is serious. Okay. We fulfill our commitments. That's a big deal when it comes to sending a message to China.
All right, joining us now is the retired four-star General Wesley Clark, also the former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO. General Clark, thanks for being back with us here on the Hill. I always enjoy talking with you, sir. So when you saw this earlier today, as this transcript and this story was put out earlier this morning, I wonder what you made of it and the comments there from the Commander-in-Chief.
No, it's straight U.S. policy. But here's the thing behind it. What we want to do is deter a Chinese military action. And so it's not just that statement, but it's the work to build up the alliances and the other things. Secretary Austin was in the conference with the Chinese this past weekend. He made it very clear we're building up alliances. The Philippines is basically voting to side with us. That's a big change for the Philippines over the last decade. And that's chilling China, and they don't like it. And so deterrence is a combination of a lot of different things. It's alliances, it's economics, it's diplomacy, and that's what we're looking for here is deterrence, not a war.
What would you be advising the president right now?
Well, I'd say, Mr. President, you said the right thing there. We're going to do everything we can, but don't forget, the Chinese are watching what's happening in Ukraine. And the fact is that if we lose in Ukraine, we being the West, lose to Russia, and Russia overruns that government or throws it out, or we get a fake peace agreement there that gives Putin time to rearm and so forth, that's all a positive for Xi Jinping. That encourages him to think about he's going to move on Taiwan. So the two theaters are connected, Ukraine, Taiwan.
Mulvaney said something on this show yesterday that caught my attention. Here's what Mick said about what a possible next war or next war front could look like, and I'll get your reaction on the other side.
This is the front line of the next war.
China.
Yes, cyber, okay?
Cyber,
and chemicals. This is our grandparents dropped bombs on stormed beaches.
Right.
Okay, the next war will be fought. Why would you bomb somebody's water plant when you can simply take it offline? I think attention to it from both parties is attention well given.
Headline in the Wall Street Journal, General China is, quote unquote, pre-positioning for future cyber attacks, and the new NSA chief is worried. Is Mick right there? Is he on to something?
Well, sure. I mean, since 1999, the Chinese have recognized that they want to go for network attack. They want to attack our infrastructure with cyber. They don't have to do it with kinetic means. So, but on balance, we're mostly ahead, but we are really worried about the electricity grid and even more about water supplies and so forth, which have been less well defended. We're doing pretty well on cyber helping Ukraine. So we got to clean up our act a little bit on cyber against China. But just one thing I would add to all of this is that we are actually engaged in a struggle right now with Russia and China in the U.S. domestic political scene. You have Putin's talking points being repeated by people who are U.S. political leaders, and he loves it.
We'll leave it there. General Wesley Clark, always nice to talk to you, sir. We'll see you soon. All right, have a good one. Meantime, more than 50 years after Apollo 11 first planted the American flag on the moon, China is now making history in a similar way. Would you look at this? The Chinese national flag unfurled by the country's rover on the far side of the moon, the side that faces the furthest away from Earth. Why is this important? This is the first flag to be flown there. Before departing, the rover also collected the first rock and soil samples. All right, so that's what China says it was able to do here in the recent days. Around the table, what do we see? Mick, what do you see there?
The next forefront of competition. I mean, this is going to happen. It's going to happen on the moon. It's going to happen in orbit. It's going to happen a lot of different places. China is for real, and we need to take them seriously, and I think that we are.
What do you see there, Kurt?
It looks fake. Looks staged. I don't know if I buy this.
I always never understand how something that looks like that, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist in the least bit, but like you go to the museums here and you see it, and you're like, that thing make it all the way up there. Anyways, what do you see?
I see the Chinese having, I'm sure, in their media, a very good day showing that they can reach up there, that they're on the moon, that they put a flag up, and this is another frontier of competition with them.
Isn't every day a good day in Chinese media?
Fair point, Rob.
Yeah, I think this is the next frontier. It could be Arctic, could be Antarctic, could be space.
Yeah, good point.
These are images. These are things that build up their international reputation. That's what they're doing.
Yeah, you got to wonder what the space front and frontier and that space race looks like. All right, still to come here from the Hill on the other side of the break. Hot Mic with Mick. Harvard, gambling, and Trump.
Trump, gambling, and Harvard, three of my favorite things.
And baseball. Yeah, is that the order?
I have no idea what the order is. I remember the topics today.
That is good. Trump, gambling, and Harvard is the order. Hot Mic with Mick, other side of the break. You're watching The Hill. You're on NewsNation.
Bill O'Reilly on Cuomo.
I don't say it often, but Bill O'Reilly, you're spot on.
TV's liveliest and most honest debate.
And I enjoy doing this with you. I would never tell anybody that, Cuomo, so keep it just between you and me, okay?
Tomorrow at 8, 7 Central, only on NewsNation.
Budget Director, White House Chief of Staff, tells us what he's hearing, what he's thinking. All right, Mulvaney, let's start with the top of the ticket. President Biden speaking at a fundraising event on Monday and said of Donald Trump the following, quote, "For the first time in American history, a former president that is a convicted felon is now seeking the office of the presidency," adding, quote, "Something snapped in this guy for real. It's literally driving him crazy." Here's what's notable about that. It's the first time that President Biden, Mick, has called Trump a quote-unquote convicted felon, but he did it behind closed doors when there was no camera there.
That's right. And what we're going to wait and see now is, does he take it out on the road? Does he trot it out?
Do you think he's going to?
I don't know what they gain by doing this,
that.
Blake. I just don't. Everybody knows Trump is a convicted felon. You can't turn on a television or read a newspaper or go online in this country and not see Trump convicted felon. So I'm not sure what it adds to them. Adds to Biden. If he wants to stay above the fray, maybe he doesn't do it. It doesn't surprise me that you do it in a fundraiser. In fact, it's probably the right place and time to do it.
So the campaign has done it, and we talked about this the other day. Is he waiting, Kurt, because his son's on trial right now?
Well, maybe
right?
that. Or if I were Biden and you were going to do this, I would save it and do it at the first debate and just get under Trump's skin. And
so don't put it on camera until the first.
Yeah,
don't put it on tape
because that's the moment that everyone will play over and over again, no matter what is said after that debate. Biden calling Trump to his face a convicted felon. That's the moment.
Do you want him doing this?
Well, I think the other point in doing that is a trigger.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows what Trump is going to do with that when he says that right to his face on TV?
Do you think that's the moment he's waiting for here? Because
I think that's a good hypothesis on it. I think that could be a good, if he wants to try to get under Trump's skin, that's a good strategy. But I don't think Biden can help himself. He said it once now. He's not going to be able to stop himself from saying it again at some point.
So when that happens face to face, let's just assume it does. Or go with the word if. If it happens, what's the response from Trump, you think, in that scenario?
I honestly don't know. I've run through my own head a couple different times. The range of possible responses is almost infinite.
The limit does not exist.
I do not see him coming across and taking a swing at the guy. Okay, but I mean that's certainly on the list of things that you have to consider. Right. My guess is that this campaign is much more disciplined in 2024 than it was in 2020, and certainly in 2016. So the folks who are running this place are having this conversation right now, and they're going through the 4 or 5 ways to respond to it. Don't don't be surprised if Trump comes up, because they know Biden's going to say it. That's one of the things you want to have in a debate. You want to have that opportunity where you know what somebody else is going to say, because it does give you a chance to pull the Ronald Reagan move about, I'm not going to make fun of the youth of my opponent. So don't discount the fact that Trump turns it into a positive.
So we're setting it at minus 200. He does. Plus 150. He doesn't. Meantime, over to a gambling controversy. Major League Baseball now banning the Padres infielder Tucupita Marcano for life after he was caught betting on MLB games, including his own team. This comes in the wake of the Shohei Ohtani scandal, when the megastar was cleared of any wrongdoing, but he was at the center of an investigation. And just 2 months after Jonte Porter received a lifetime ban from the NBA. Did you know, I'm sure Mick knows, Ron probably knows, there is a gaming caucus here in Washington. So Mick, is Congress going to do anything about this? Because this is now front and center. Sports betting, sports gambling has exploded across this country, and I wonder if there's going to be a tipping point for Congress.
No, first of all, this guy's not on my fantasy team, so I'm not disturbed that he's suspended. Baseball has a very unique history with gambling. This goes back to the early 20th century during the Black Sox scandal, and I get it and I understand it, but a lifetime ban for something like this all this will do now, because nobody knows who this is. He's a young player. He was on the injured reserve list. He hadn't been in the majors very long. But what will this bring up again now is the Pete Rose issue. The Pete Rose, the greatest hitter of all time, has been banned for life for betting on his own team while he was coaching. He's still alive. He's not in the Hall of Fame. And this will bring it back to the forefront. You will not have congressional hearings on what happened here in the last 24 hours. But every now and then we did talk about having congressional hearings about Pete Rose. And we even talked about it in the White House.
Well, that's real. Yeah. What do you mean? Congressional?
Just in the White House.
On Pete Rose?
On Pete Rose, yeah.
You wanted to
raise the issue. It's almost like a conversation you have about pardons with criminals, right? If we're going to pardon this person or this person, what can we do to help Pete Rose?
What would you have done with Pete Rose in the White House?
I think Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame.
No, I know, but what would you have done in the White House?
We talked about having the president come out and do something and even just raise the issue and say Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame.
I'll tell you, the most widely attended media bonanza congressional hearing I ever saw was when we had Mark McGuire and Sammy Sosa at the Oversight Committee.
Too, maybe.
Right, it was
the juicing scandal.
Yeah. Tom Davis was.
Congress gets involved in this, Ron? Yes or no?
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think, there's good things to talk about and a lot of crazy stuff, but I don't think this is it.
No.
I think they could down the road about gaming and about betting in sports, but I don't think this is going to be the trigger point.
All right. Meantime, Harvard now dropping its mandatory diversity statements for faculty applicants. Instead, the school's biggest faculty division will require finalists for teaching jobs to describe their, quote, efforts to strengthen academic communities and discuss how they would promote a learning environment in which students are encouraged to ask questions and share their ideas. The Ivy League University's latest shift back to academics comes after announcing last week it would stop weighing in on politics. This is one of your dozen or so alma maters. What do you make of what Harvard did?
And one of my favorites. I don't buy it. I really don't buy it. This is, to me, this screams of window dressing until you start to see wholesale personnel changes and wholesale sort of changes in philosophy. This is going to be meaningless. And I think there's evidence of it already. I apologize, I have to read this. But Harvard put out a statement that said the updated approach would acknowledge the many ways faculty contribute to strengthening their academic communities, including efforts to increase diversity, inclusion, and belonging, which is exactly what they said they weren't going to do. And they specifically rejected the neutrality approach that the University of Chicago has been promoting and putting in place with such great success. I went to Harvard. I've taught at Chicago, and I tell you, there is a noticeable difference between the students at those two places.
Kurt, you buying it?
No, I think Nick's right. I mean, again, this is the theme of the day. They're trying to have it both ways, have it all ways, trying to say the right thing, but in actuality, they're still doing what they were doing anyway.
Right. All right. Well, we are looking from our hill to yours now. Hello. By the way, that was Hot Mike with. I do that every time. I forget to wrap Hot Mic with Mick.
And I forget the topics, so
you
we're
forget the
okay.
topics. I forget to wrap. Hot Mic with Mick. Thank you, sir.
Why don't you do the topics next time, and I'll wrap it.
Sure. You're trying to be like Wiley Nickel now and be the moderator of the show? Hot Mic with Mick. Time from our hill to yours now. And hello to those watching us on NewsNation or listening to us on SiriusXM in Paradise Hills, New Mexico. Paradise Hills is a suburb of Albuquerque, New Mexico's largest city. Paradise Hills is represented by the Democratic Congresswoman Melanie Stansbury. New Mexico, as you might know, has gone blue the last 4 presidential elections, with President Biden winning 54% last go-around. By the way, it is also Election Day, not only just in New Mexico, but also in South Dakota. So we say hello to our viewers there in Hill City, South Dakota. From our hill to yours, hello from around the country. That was the theme today, trying to have it both ways, huh?
Yeah.
We should always have it all of our ways.
I mean, the border news is such a big story. We've been following it here for months, and we've been waiting for the day that the president would finally take action. He did.
Well, right. We've been talking how many times have they floated the executive action, the executive order.
And they did it. You should be overjoyed and excited.
You know what? They did it when it was politically expedient for them, which is exactly what I said. They
Did we scare the former congressman off?
Yeah, you coming back?
No, I think this is great.
That's good? Okay.
It was Mick, right? It was Mick.
Other side of the break. Remember the UNC students who defended the U.S. flag during the protests?
Another one of my alma maters.
Another one of Mick's alma mater. Not joking. Their $500,000 rager now set. Leland Vittert joins us. The other side of the break. You're watching The Hill. Welcome back here to The Hill on NewsNation. So before we say goodbye, here's a story that caught our eye. Remember this scene from earlier this year, a month or so ago? A group of fraternity brothers at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, went viral for defending the American flag from a group of pro-Palestinian protesters. Well, Pints for Patriots and country music star John Rich are using the $500,000 in GoFundMe donations to throw the flag-protecting fraternity brothers a massive rager. It is called Flagstock 2024. It will happen on Labor Day. Last month, they joined Leland Vittert alongside John Rich and explained why they did it.
For us, it's not about fame. It's not about coolness. It's about bringing attention to our message. Stand up for what you believe in. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.
It's been a long time since I've seen young people do what you guys did and remind us whose shoulders we stand on.